He was 67 years old, retired teacher, no major health complaints. His wife said he seemed completely fine when he went to bed. He even kissed her goodnight and said he'd see her in the morning. He never woke up. And here is the part that still haunts me. When the autopsy came back, there was no mystery. The cause was clear. His heart gave out between 2 and 4 in the morning, a massive coronary event during sleep. And when I looked at his history, I already knew what had happened because I had seen it dozens of times before. The trigger wasn't a blockage that appeared overnight. It wasn't bad luck. It was something he had been doing every single evening without a second thought. Something millions of people over 60 do right now, tonight, without any idea what it's quietly doing to their heart while they sleep. I'm Dr. Franklin. For 23 years, I've worked as an interventional cardiologist. I have threaded catheters into blocked coronary arteries. I have restarted hearts. I have sat with families at 5 in the morning and delivered the news that nobody should ever have to receive. And the most painful part of this job is not the emergencies. It's knowing almost every time that it could have been prevented. Not with surgery, not with expensive medication, with information, simple, specific, actionable information that nobody bothered to give these people in time. Tonight, I'm going to give it to you because you still have time. And what I'm about to show you isn't what you're expecting. Stay with me. Everything changes in the next few minutes. Before we get into the habits themselves, I need you to understand something about the biology of what happens inside your body after 60. Because once you understand this, everything else I tell you will make complete sense. Your cardiovascular system runs on rhythms, daytime rhythms, nighttime rhythms, hormonal cycles that shift every few hours. During the day, your body runs what I call full crew operations. Your stress hormones are managed. Your blood pressure fluctuates within a safe range. Your nervous system has multiple backup layers to compensate if something goes wrong. At night, that changes dramatically. Between midnight and 5 in the morning, your parasympathetic nervous system takes over. Your heart rate drops. Blood pressure should decrease. Your body is supposed to be running a cardiovascular maintenance cycle, repairing vessel walls, clearing inflammation, stabilizing plaque. But after 60, something important shifts. The signals that used to trigger that nighttime dip become weaker. The arteries that used to relax become stiffer, and the small hormonal cues that once protected you while you slept start to fade. What does that mean practically? It means that whatever you put into your evening, whatever habits you run in those final hours before sleep, gets amplified. Stresses that your younger self would have absorbed without consequence become, after 60, genuine cardiac events waiting to happen. And here's the detail nobody tells you. The most dangerous habits aren't the ones that feel dangerous. They're the ones that feel completely ordinary, reasonable, even healthy. Before we get into the first habit, take a moment to say hello in the comments. Tell me your name and where you're watching from. I read every comment and I'd love to know who I'm helping today. Habit 1, the pain reliever habit. I want to ask you something and I want you to be honest with yourself. Do you take ibuprofen, naproxen, or any over-the-counter anti-inflammatory before bed? Maybe for a bad knee, a sore lower back, arthritis in your hands that flares up by evening. If you answered yes, you are in very large company. Millions of older adults do exactly this, and the reason makes complete sense. The pain is real, the relief is real, the pill works. So, what's the problem? The problem is what that pill is doing to your cardiovascular system overnight at the exact hours when your heart is most vulnerable. Nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, the entire class of drugs that includes ibuprofen and naproxen, do something very specific and very dangerous inside your blood vessels. They cause sodium and fluid retention. Your body holds water it should be releasing. That retained fluid pushes your blood volume up, your blood pressure follows, and that pressure doesn't just rise during the day when your body can manage it. It rises at night, during the hours when your arteries are supposed to be resting, during the hours when even a modest pressure increase hits vessel walls that are undefended and unprepared. Studies have found that regular NSAID use raises blood pressure by an average of 5 millimeters of mercury. That number might sound small. In the context of nighttime cardiovascular physiology in someone over 60, it is not small at all. It is the difference between a vessel wall under manageable stress and one that cracks. There's a second mechanism that's even more worrying. NSAIDs interfere with prostaglandins, the chemical signals your body uses to prevent clot formation in small arteries. With those signals blunted overnight, blood that is already moving more slowly during sleep becomes more prone to clotting in vessels that may already be narrowed by decades of arterial disease. This is one of the most underreported cardiac risk factors I see in patients over 60. Not because it's rare, because it's invisible. Nobody connects the ibuprofen they took for their knee to the heart attack they had at 3:00 in the morning. What should you do? Talk to your doctor about alternatives. Topical anti-inflammatory creams applied directly to the skin give you local relief with far less systemic absorption. Acetaminophen, used at the correct dose, handles pain without the blood pressure and clotting effects. Heat therapy, stretching, and targeted physical therapy have surprisingly strong evidence for joint pain management. None of these will solve every situation, but any of them is meaningfully safer than a nightly NSAID habit for your sleeping heart. If you recognize yourself in what I just described, please write it down tonight and raise it at your next appointment. This one conversation could be more important than you realize. Habit 2, the nightcap. Let me tell you something I hear from patients more often than almost anything else. I have one glass of wine before bed. It helps me relax. It's good for the heart. I understand where this belief comes from. For decades, headlines told us that moderate alcohol use was protective. Red wine especially. Resveratrol, antioxidants, cardiovascular benefits. It became almost conventional wisdom. I need to dismantle this gently but completely because the truth, as we now understand it, looks very different, especially for anyone over 60. Here is what actually happens inside your cardiovascular system when you drink alcohol in the evening. The first effect is what most people feel: relaxation, a drop in anxiety, an initial drop in blood pressure. Seems harmless, seems good even, but alcohol is metabolized by the liver over several hours. And as that process completes, somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning while you are deeply asleep, the effect reverses. Blood pressure rebounds, heart rate becomes irregular, and the nervous system, which was briefly suppressed, snaps back with heightened activity. Here is the part that should genuinely alarm you. Alcohol is one of the most potent triggers of atrial fibrillation known to cardiology. AFib, the condition where the heart's upper chambers beat chaotically, irregularly, out of sync with the lower chambers. AFib during sleep is particularly dangerous because the person has no warning, no symptoms they can feel. The heart is just quietly misfiring while they sleep. And the risk doesn't require heavy drinking. A study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found that even low levels of regular alcohol consumption, the kind most people would describe as responsible social drinking, were associated with a significantly elevated risk of AFib. In people over 60, that risk compounds because the cardiac electrical system is already less stable than it was at 40. There's another mechanism that rarely gets discussed. Alcohol suppresses antidiuretic hormone, which means it pulls water out of your tissues overnight. You wake up dehydrated. But by then, your blood has already been thickening for hours, moving through arteries at a slower pace in a body that has been lying still. The conditions for clot formation are almost textbook. I am not here to make you miserable. I'm not telling you that one glass at a dinner party 3 times a year is going to kill you. What I'm telling you is that a nightly evening drink, framed as a healthy habit, is doing something to your sleeping heart that you cannot feel, but that I can see in my cath lab with depressing regularity. If this is your habit, consider moving the drink to earlier in the evening, at least 3 hours before bed. Give your liver time to clear the metabolites before you go horizontal, or replace the ritual entirely with something that gives you the same unwinding signal without the cardiovascular cost. If you're still here with me and finding this helpful, take a moment to type 2 in the comments. It lets me know you're watching and getting value from this. Habit 3, what you watch before sleep. This one I know will surprise you because it doesn't sound like a cardiac issue at all. Tell me something. What did you watch before bed last night? The news? A true crime documentary? A tense drama? A political debate you stumbled into on social media? I ask every patient that question now. And I've started asking it because of something I've seen too consistently to ignore. Here is the physiology. Your body cannot distinguish between a genuine threat and a perceived emotional threat. When you watch something frightening, enraging, or deeply distressing, your brain activates the same stress response as if you were physically in danger. Cortisol surges, adrenaline spikes, your heart rate elevates, blood vessels constrict. Now, if this happens at noon, your body clears the stress hormones within 30 to 45 minutes and returns to baseline. You go on with your day and you're fine. But if that cortisol spike happens at 10:30 at night, 20 minutes before you try to sleep, something very different occurs. Your nervous system, which was supposed to be transitioning into parasympathetic nighttime mode, gets hijacked. The cortisol peak lingers. Your blood pressure, which was supposed to dip during the early hours of sleep, instead stays elevated or climbs further. And your heart, rather than slowing into its overnight recovery rhythm, stays running at a pace it shouldn't. In patients over 60, this matters more than most people realize. Because that nighttime blood pressure dip, the one your body is supposed to take automatically, is already less reliable than it was at 40. You don't need extra interference. There's a specific pattern I want you to watch for in yourself. Do you fall asleep fine, but then wake up somewhere between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning with a racing heart or a vague sense of anxiety? That is often the cortisol echo, the stress hormone you loaded before bed returning in its second wave during the natural cortisol trough of deep sleep. The solution is genuinely simple, though I know it fights against habits of a lifetime. Protect the final 60 to 90 minutes before bed from emotionally activating content, not just news, anything that generates sustained psychological arousal. Replace it with something genuinely low stimulation, slow reading, calm conversation, gentle music, light walking around the house. Your brain needs a runway to land. If you deny it that runway, your heart pays the cost all night long. Habit 4, calcium supplements at the wrong time. I want to spend a moment here on something that most people, including many doctors, genuinely don't know. And I want to be very precise because the nuance matters. Calcium supplements, many people over 60 take them, often recommended by doctors for bone density, osteoporosis prevention, completely reasonable. I'm not here to tell you to stop taking calcium. I am here to tell you that when you take it matters and that a specific pattern of calcium supplementation has been linked in multiple large studies to increased arterial calcification and cardiovascular risk. Here is the mechanism. When you take a high-dose calcium supplement without adequate magnesium balance, without vitamin K2 to direct the calcium toward bones rather than vessel walls, and in a body that is already in a relatively inactive nighttime state, excess calcium that cannot be absorbed into bone tissue has to go somewhere. And in susceptible individuals, it begins to deposit in the soft tissues, in the arterial walls. The Rotterdam study, which followed thousands of people over many years, found that supplemental calcium intake, particularly in high doses, was associated with increased coronary artery calcification in older adults. This does not mean calcium is your enemy. It means the form, the dose, and the timing all matter. The specific nighttime risk is this. During sleep, gut motility slows and kidney filtration shifts. A large bolus of supplemental calcium taken right before bed is metabolized under different conditions than one taken with lunch. The mineral balance is harder for the body to regulate. And in arteries that are already under low overnight blood flow, the conditions for arterial calcification are not improved by a surge of unbalanced calcium. What should you do? Take your calcium earlier in the day, not at bedtime. Split the dose if your doctor recommends a larger amount. Ask specifically about magnesium and vitamin K2 co-supplementation, which the evidence suggests significantly changes how the body handles supplemental calcium. And talk to your doctor about whether testing for coronary calcium scoring makes sense given your age and risk profile. I know this isn't the conversation most people expect to be having about calcium, but what we think we know about supplements and what the long-term outcome data actually shows are frequently very different things. If this has been helpful so far, consider sharing this with a friend or loved one who takes calcium supplements. This is something many people simply aren't aware of, and a simple like helps more people find this information. Habit 5, how you get into bed. This is the one I almost didn't include because it sounds almost absurdly minor. And then I remember a specific patient, a 71-year-old man who had been having what he described as brief dizzy spells in the morning and at night. He'd had them for months. He'd been told it was probably inner ear trouble. He'd been sent home with meclizine. He came to me after his third episode. I caught something on his monitor that the other doctors had missed. His blood pressure was dropping dangerously every time he stood or sat up quickly, and it was spiking back up with equal violence every time he lay down fast. His heart was fighting against these sudden positional shifts 2, sometimes 3 times a night, every single night. The condition is called orthostatic hypotension, and after 60, it is far more common than most people realize. The blood pressure regulation system that used to adjust in real time to positional changes starts to lag. When you stand up quickly from lying down, blood pools in the lower body for a few extra seconds. Pressure drops. The brain, momentarily undersupplied, can trigger everything from lightheadedness to brief loss of consciousness. And when that oxygen drop happens to the coronary arteries at the wrong moment, it can trigger arrhythmia. But here is the direction most people overlook. The same dysregulation that causes problems when standing up can also cause problems going the opposite way. Lying down quickly, especially after being upright for hours, can trigger a sudden blood pressure spike as the cardiovascular system overcompensates. In a person with fragile arterial plaque, a sudden nocturnal blood pressure spike is not a trivial event. The fix costs you nothing. When you're ready for bed, sit on the edge of the mattress for 60 seconds before lying down. Let your circulation stabilize. When you wake during the night to use the bathroom, do the same thing in reverse. Sit up slowly, pause, stand carefully, let your body catch up. 60 seconds of patience, 2 to 3 times a night. It is one of the simplest cardiac protections available to anyone over 60, and almost nobody does it because nobody has ever told them to. Now, I want to pull everything together because I didn't come here tonight to give you 5 reasons to be anxious. I came to give you 5 problems and 5 specific solutions that together form an evening protocol I recommend to every patient over 60. Here is what the safe evening looks like. By 7 in the evening, you've finished eating your main meal. Not necessarily early by the clock, but you've given your heart 3 to 4 hours of digestive peace before sleep. Also by 7, if you take pain medication for joint discomfort, you've chosen a safer alternative than an NSAID, a topical gel, acetaminophen, heat therapy. Your nighttime blood pressure thanks you. If you enjoy a drink socially, it has already happened earlier in the evening, not as a bedtime ritual. Your liver has had time to process it. Your AFib risk tonight is meaningfully lower. By 9:00, your screen content has shifted, not off necessarily, but down-regulated, something calm, something that doesn't spike cortisol. You are giving your nervous system its landing strip. Your calcium supplement was taken with lunch, not now. What you may take now, if your doctor agrees, is magnesium glycinate, one of the most bioavailable forms, which supports vascular relaxation and has excellent evidence for improving sleep quality and reducing nighttime blood pressure variability. By 9:30, your room is set. Between 18 and 22 degrees C, 65 to 72 degree F, a glass of water on the nightstand. By 10 shears, you are getting into bed, not falling backward into it, sitting on the edge for 60 seconds first, letting your circulation settle, then lying down on your side if you can. Your airway stays clearer, your back takes less vertical pressure, your heart works slightly less to manage circulation when your body is lateral rather than supine. And when you wake at 2 or 3 in the morning, as most people over 60 do, you sit up slowly, you take a sip of water, you give yourself 60 seconds before standing. And when you come back to bed, you do the same thing in reverse. That is not a complicated protocol. It requires no prescription, no equipment, no money, just awareness, just the information you now have that most people in your age group are still missing. I want to speak to you directly for a moment before I finish. Not as someone making content, as someone who has spent 23 years watching what happens when people don't have this information. The patients I have lost on that table, the families I have spoken to at impossible hours of the morning, they weren't unlucky people. They were ordinary people doing ordinary things, taking the pain pill that worked, having the glass of wine that helped them unwind, watching the news before bed like they had every night for 30 years. They had no idea that the combination of those habits, layered on top of the natural cardiovascular vulnerabilities that come after 60, was building toward a catastrophic event while they slept. You now know what they didn't, and that changes things. Not dramatically, not overnight, but it changes things in the most important way possible. Because prevention doesn't happen in a hospital, it happens at 9:45 on a Tuesday night when you turn off the news, drink a glass of water, set the thermostat, and sit on the edge of your bed for 60 seconds before lying down. That's where lives are saved. In the ordinary moments that nobody is watching except your heart. I want to ask you something before you go. Of the 5 habits I described tonight, which one caught you off guard? The one you least expected? Tell me in the comments. I read them. And if you know someone over 60, a spouse, a sibling, a friend who is living with any of these patterns right now, please send them this video. They may not know to look for it, but you do. Take care of yourself and take care of your heart. It has been working for you every single night without stopping. The least we can do is give it a fighting chance. Everything I've shared in this video reflects current cardiovascular research and my own clinical experience. It is general health education, not a substitute for your personal medical care. Before changing anything about your medication routine, especially blood pressure medication or supplements, please consult your own physician. That's not a formality. That's genuine advice from someone who wants you to still be watching this channel a decade from now. Good night. Sleep safely. Subscribe for more preventive health content for adults over 60. New videos every week.